Plain and simple. Today's video is all about how to write a research paper. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to an episode of Research Tips and Advice. If you're new here, my name is Aamir Hussain. I love to talk about research, so much so I decided to make YouTube videos and Instagram content, as you can see over here, to help all these fellow researchers around the world. But today is all about essentially writing a research paper, and we know that whether you've gathered the data or your PI has probably asked you to write a research paper, and you're probably sitting there like, right, I've got my data here, got how do I attack it? How do I approach it? And that's what's on your mind, or if you're unsure, then today's video is going to be really, really beneficial for you. Because I'll be going through a quick walkthrough of my process of writing a paper and some little nuances on each step. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, the key part of any research paper, and especially when you're writing it, is reducing the barriers and the frictions to your creative flow to get all of those juices, all of those very key kind of discussions coming up. Now, with that in mind, the first thing you should do in any research paper is you focus on the results. That's the thing you start off with. Because no matter where you publish, no matter what paper you read, the core essence of any research paper is the results. It's the findings. It's the figures, it's the graphs, it's the tables, or if it's the data file or the coding, whatever it may be, any research paper is centered around the results. So it's probably best to start with it. And the reason why it's so important is, out of everything, the thing you know the most is the results. The thing you know in your brain that you can probably write out the figure yourself, you know the values, you know the percentages or the stats analysis, it's in your head already. And if that's in your head already, it's the core essence of the paper. It's a really good way then to start. It's a really good starting point for your process. So practical applications is get your figures in a paper type of format. So whether it's sectioned, whether it's with the 300 DPI format, essentially that's kind of the quality of what that figure should be. Make sure there's no spelling mistakes, make sure the axes are aligned. So all those nitty gritty things that make sure that your figure is spot on, get that done first before you even write anything on your paper. Get that done first, and then import it into a Word document or wherever you want to write it, and then start writing the caption for that figure. Now we know with captions, even with paper formats compared to thesis formats, you know you're going to write a lot shorter caption than what you write in your thesis. And get that ready, put that in, and then you're starting to now have your center block in your paper ready. And then once you've done that, the next part, which you've probably already done, is writing what you see. So as I mentioned in previous stories and in previous videos, you're looking at the results. So let's say my results on the screen. I'll be like, right, drug X did this. Oh, this cell line did this. It showed this. It inhibited it by this. That's it. Very plain and simple. Write what you see. And just put that down on the paragraph. You've now started the first part of your paper. Now, with this video, you'll see that there's a lot of continuations. Now that you've written your results, what is a very key continuation from your results? Let's go into part 2. That is your discussion. Once you've written your results, you naturally want to discuss it. Because many people, even in their thesis, to have results and discussions together. The reason why it's so easy to talk about what you see and then discuss it. And what we do with discussion is whatever results and findings that we have, we then discuss it with previous literature. So drug X, this is this, which is in line with current findings stated by John XL XYZ, right? Or what we showed in this particular model is in keeping with what has been described by da-da-da. This is different to what I've seen before, or this is in line, or this is in conjunction, or this is on a similar type of process by this. You can see there's different ways to discuss. And a lot of people think, okay, how do I write my discussion? If you're discussing what you have with something, against something, in line with something, as opposed to something, and that's what your discussion would be. And you know what you're looking at in a discussion because you've already found a gap in the knowledge, right? From your understanding, from your discussions with your supervisors, your PIs, you know what has been done before because now you figured out what needs to be done, which is the essence of your paper, right? So you already know in your head what has been done before. Many of you probably even know the names of these papers because you've gone so niche and you figured out that, okay, this is the essence of what you need to write because of X, Y, and Z papers. And once you know them, in your discussion, you can say, right, we have found X, Y, and Z, which is similar as opposed to indifferent, whichever, linking vocabulary you want to use. And that's how you start to develop and just expand your discussion. Now, the very, very important part of this is don't start correcting what you've written yet. When you write a discussion, just literally write what comes out of your mind. It's connected. There's this connection. There's that connection. Even if you're starting to write something which you know, but you forgot the name, don't stop. This is what I mean by reducing barriers in fictions. Leave a placeholder for that reference. Leave a placeholder for that linking vocabulary. Write what is coming out of your mind, and if something's blocking you, just leave a placeholder and carry on. This is how I was able to write my thesis effectively. Again, that's another video entirely. Now you start to see that from your results, you're now flowing with, creative commonalities or differences to write your discussion. Now, once that's kind of set in stone, you've compared, you've contrasted, you've linked, literature from before. What is the next thing? You might think it's conclusion, but it's actually your introduction. The next thing after writing your discussion should be your introduction. And here's a very, very simple reason why. Having written your results and discussion, you know what is the ending of the story. You know what is going to be in terms of writing the discussions, the results, then the discussion. You know what's the end point. So you want to set the scene to target that end journey in your introduction. It's a very clever way of doing it. So when you write your introduction, you start to put in like points of pondering, points of like rhetorical questions that essentially you are forming a very biased path for the reader to go down your path, which is your journey, your research, your results, your discussion. Because you know where you're going to end up, you then start to the start of the journey, which is the introduction. You then cater it towards your particular area. Because a lot of people, when they start to write the introduction, they get lost. They don't know where they're going because they haven't written the results and the discussion yet to know where they should angle, they should target the introduction towards, right? So let's say right now I'm writing a paper on COVID and allergy and there's some interesting findings. My introduction is going to be catered towards that particular subpopulation of allergy to then set up the questions as to why is this and this a problem? Why hasn't this been looked at? Perhaps this could cause an issue. Here we report the findings of da. Because I know where I'm going, I can then set, the last paragraph on the introduction to really, essentially, it's a very statement I realized in my thesis, which was a true story or really good research writing piece is which in one page you ask a lot of questions to the reader, of which you answer on the next page. Now, it sounds a bit wishy-washy, but honestly what I mean is, in your introduction, where you plan to see whatever research you're doing, you'll talk about a problem or a need, what has been done before, what is missing, and then you set the scene for your paper. In that, you want to start to probe questions in the way that you're writing. You want to start to make them think about, okay, why is this an issue? Why hasn't that been done before? Why do we need to look at this compound? Why is this model really important? Then you directly answer those questions in your results, in your discussion. So then it flows as an actual story, for example. So many of you might have read my thesis about anti-angiogenic therapy, where we talk about, drugs that block new blood vessel formation. But when I was writing the papers for it, I knew that I said, now look, anti-angiogenic is amazing. It can be a problem. Of the problems are this. Of the possible solutions are 1, 2, and 3. Here we report interesting findings of solution number 2. Very nice and targeted introduction that then sets the scene that, oh, right, what is solution number 2? That's interesting to see what this paper shows. And then I talk about my results and findings for solution number 2. So introduction, because many of you we all know the upside down triangle where you start off vague, then you get closer and narrower, niche and niche, and then you form your niche point at the end of introduction. Now, an interesting bit for a paper is you want to set the scene. What is the problem? What is the need that you're trying to fill with your research. Explain why is it really important. Explain what has been done before. Explain what hasn't been done before. What problems there are. What you're trying to solve. And that's your flow for introduction. But then you're probably wondering, what's actually next? Is to tie it all up in your conclusion. Now you're probably wondering, what about the methods? Methods generally we write way before we even think about writing a paper, because we already know the methods well before we make the results or we find the results, right? So that's something I'm not going to go into too much detail, because pretty much everybody knows genuinely how to write their methods. They'll copy a template from a paper. In terms of conclusion, you're going to reintroduce what the problem was before, which is the kind of the first sentence. There is an issue, there is a global problem. You then summarize a little bit without copying your introduction again. Look at, there have been reports of this process or this pathway or this drug, but here's where it gets into actual conclusion, not an introduction. You then talk about what you did, what you conclude, what you found. And if you think about it, you made maybe 7 or 8 points in your discussion. You look at the major findings from that, and then you summarize in your conclusion. So again, to give you an idea of how a conclusion can flow, let's look at code, for example, and a new drug that has been developed. I'm just going off the top of my head. You can think about it like COVID has been a huge burden on the population because of X, Y, and Z. It has plagued several subpopulations, and there have been reports of new oral inhibitors of the epitope or the antigen that is causing a problem within COVID. We here report the major breakthrough of drug X, which was shown to inhibit hemagglutinin by as well as drug Y, which was able to inhibit the viral entry by using this and this method. This is new, or this is novel because of the That's literally your conclusion, right? And then to finish off the conclusion, you were like, further work is needed to be looked at to explore this pathway, or if you're looking at something else, this artistry or this analysis or this, software reboot or whatever your research is. Then you start to finish your conclusion. So you're tying up things together. You're reintroducing the problem. You're summarizing the main findings of your paper. You're then looking at what else needs to be done. Finish. That's your conclusion. You're concluding. It's in the word itself. So once you've done that, you're then going to go backwards to your abstract. Now, generally, your abstract will be either a big paragraph, or sometimes some papers do want it as introduction, methods, results, discussion. And if that is, you just write a sentence of each. So a sentence, for example, again, going back to COVID. COVID is a huge problem. Of the population's allergy is a problematic. We then report X, Y, and Z. You're setting the scene in introduction, essentially. Results, this and this happened via this. Done. Methods, it was this and this pathway, this and this assay was used, this model was used. Done. Discussion, drug X did this, drug Y did this shows this. Done. Conclusion, these novel drugs could be put forward as preclinical candidates for the possibility to treat COVID via inhibiting this pathway. Abstract. So many of you know about the abstract. I'm going to do a separate video entirely on how to formulate that, the right wording, the right terminology. But in this video, in terms of a crash course on how to write a research paper, hopefully that suffices. You're just picking out the major sentence from what you've written already, and you're just summarizing it even more. But here's why I mentioned abstract at the end. Once you've written everything, you then know where everything goes. It makes it a lot easier to write the abstract, as opposed to writing at the start, because you're like, okay, how do I write the conclusion, or what do I take from the conclusion? The whole purpose of this video is to make it easy for yourself to write a paper by going in the chronological order of your brain, not of how the paper is, but how you think in terms of research. You gather the results. It's then easy to talk about discussion. Once you've done that, you can then start the story with introduction because you know where you're finishing. Once you've done that, you can then tie up the loose ends with the conclusion. Once you've done that, again, I mentioned methods before, you can then pick out the major sentences to form your abstract. And that's how you write a paper. But last but not least, the one we don't like, I don't think anybody likes, is references. Now, many of you, I know some people who do it manually, I know some people who use reference management softwares like Mendeley, RefWorks, and there may be others in different countries. But what I want to talk about in this final part of the video is when you're writing the paper, don't put references as you go along. Leave placeholders or little names, not references, little names. And once you've written everything, then you can go back and start to add where references should be. And even if you write a sentence introduction and you're unsure of who the reference is, leave a placeholder. Again, going back to the COVID example, when everybody's writing a COVID paper at the moment, they'll be right, COVID is a problem, or COVID has been a huge, burden on the NHS if you're in the UK, or this population of COVID, and you just leave a placeholder because you know you're going to find a reference later. There is no point in trying to find that reference there and then, because you're going to increase friction in terms of your writing. Think of writing, to me, as a very delicate process that's very finely tuned. So in order to get all the flow very easily out, you want to reduce the friction that stops you from writing. And one of the many problems is actually finding references, which is why it should be left at the end. However, you leave gaps of notes so you know what reference goes there, as opposed to trying to find it or trying to find the PDF or trying to find a name, for example. No. Leave a placeholder, and then when you finish writing your paper, you can start to fill it in and add your references via your software or manually. So guys, that was a little crash course in how to write a research paper and going through the flow of how you should be thinking of attacking each segment. And now hopefully you understand why you go in that order, not the abstract introduction order, because it's a lot easier then to help each other segment by doing it in this format. Again, materials already done, your results, then your discussion, go back to your introduction to start the journey, go to your in conclusion to tie it up, then go back to your abstract to follow those sentences, and then finish off with the enjoyable journey of writing your references. But if you found this video helpful, if you found this enjoyable and really useful, do give a like because it will help me and the channel. And if you do want to hear more of these type of videos, consider subscribing if you can. In that little button, just click it, and then I think it's that bell shaped thing next to it, just so then you're notified when I upload. But in any case, hope you found this video useful, and I shall see you in the next one. Take care.